Hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, then a little introduction. This is a place to share stories, adventures, and everything I wish I had known before embarking on them. My name is Trina, and you're watching From Fiji to Here. If you didn't catch the first video in this series called What to Know Before Getting Preggo, I'll link it here in the description, but essentially it covered conceiving and what to know before you actually get pregnant. The next step is this one. You did it. And don't worry, I won't tell anyone. That's not my secret to share. Now what? Let's dive into everything I wish I had known when entering the first trimester. Let's start off first with just some basics. Essentially, the first trimester covers week 1 through 13 inclusively. However, you need to know that week 1 starts from the day of your last period. Yes, so before you've even conceived a child, you're already 2 weeks pregnant. I don't fully understand it either, but that's just how they count, and we just listen and go with it. So, now let's dive into the rest. First things first, doctor's appointments. So you've probably peed on a pregnancy test and it's come back positive, and you're thinking, now what? This is going to vary based on so many factors, like if you have a family doctor, what province you are here in Canada. If you're in other parts of the world, it could be entirely different. But my experience in Nova Scotia, Canada, was that I called to make an appointment and they wanted me to wait until I was at least 10 weeks pregnant. 10 weeks is a long time when you've just peed on that stick. Also, caveat, maybe this had to do with the fact that, we were entering into a pandemic. But they wanted to be able to double things up. So by 10 weeks, you'll be looking at blood work and things like that. So they thought, okay, well, if we can get the blood work and the results simultaneously, it'll cut down on an appointment, better for the healthcare system, less visits for pregnant mothers. Other than that, that first appointment, you go through a whole bunch of questions to get your history, your background. Again, I did have a family doctor in Nova Scotia. However, he doesn't deliver babies, but there were other doctors at his practice that do. So I kind of got to stay in the same practice, but moved to a different physician. But yeah, that first appointment, it's a lot of questions, going through your history, symptoms so far. Also, they ask you a bunch of questions that you might not know the answers to yet. So things like, do you plan on breastfeeding? Do you want an epidural? Do you want a medicated or unmedicated birth? Like everything you can think of about like delivery when you've just been on a stick. And I'm going to be straight up. Like my answer to a lot of them was like, I don't know. Like, don't I have another 30 weeks to figure this out? That leads me to my second tip, which would be ask questions. No answer is too dumb when it comes to like your body and you're literally growing this tiny human. So advocate for yourself. I thought at that 8-week appointment that they were going to use the Doppler. I was going to be able to hear the baby's heartbeat for the first time. So when I left that appointment, and of course, like I didn't advocate for myself. I didn't ask questions on what was going to happen at the appointment. I didn't ask while I was in the appointment if they could, use the Doppler and if we could try and do that. I just ended up leaving feeling kind of disappointed. But you can ask them that. Like if I had had the courage to say in the appointment, like, hey, I thought we were going to like hear the heartbeat, the resident that I had might have gotten up and been like, yeah, sure, we can try. It might be a little too early, or sometimes babies are positioned in a different way that doesn't make it accessible, but we can always give it a go.
There we go.
I also had no idea what to expect for every appointment, how many appointments there'd be. And this is something that about halfway through my pregnancy, I did ask for clarification. So just ask anything and everything that comes up. Ask what's going to happen at your appointments. Ask what you can expect for future appointments, how many ultrasounds you can expect. Yeah, I found it really helpful that when I was at home, like I had a running list in my phone so that if something happened on, Wednesday and my appointment wasn't until like 2 weeks from then, I could write it down on my phone so that when I got to my appointment, I could just pull up the list and remember all my questions. After that first initial appointment, if you do opt into the prenatal genetic screening, you'll have to get more blood work done to check for any abnormalities with the fetus. The second topic I want to touch on is symptoms. We've all heard about the typical symptoms, things like morning sickness, always having to go to the bathroom, etc. But there's a bunch of symptoms that I didn't know were normal or common, that maybe would have felt more reassuring if I had known, so that I didn't think, oh, like, is this just me? Is something wrong? Things like that. The first one being that morning sickness is, I don't know why they call it morning. It can be all day. Like some people get it in the evening, some people get it in the morning, some people have it literally all day. It's just different for everyone. Some people have nausea constantly and never actually are sick, and other people, like myself, luck out and don't have the nausea, but randomly just become ill at random points in the day. Which, I mean, there's pros and cons to each. I don't know how my morale would be if I was nauseous all the time, but it definitely makes things difficult when you don't have any warning that you're going to be sick, like when you're at work. Or the second thing in regards to symptoms is food aversions. You hear a lot about food cravings, and you hear some women about food that they specifically are like, no, can't touch it, can't smell it, don't want it. But something that I didn't consider at all was food that the baby literally didn't want. So in Elisa's case, I had no problem with eggs. I wanted eggs. I wanted scrambled eggs so bad. And every single time I ate them, I would instantly be sick. Next up are headaches and migraines. Before pregnancy, I was not one to get headaches or migraines often, at all, really. And during my pregnancy, I was gifted what are called silent migraines. So these come without the actual headache, but with other symptoms. For me, it was mainly light sensitivity, looking at a computer screen or even outside was just too much. I would have to close my blinds, and it was bizarre because there was no pain. That being said, if you are someone who gets headaches, normally they are more common to kind of pop up more during pregnancy. So even for my silent migraines, the main things were that you just wanted to make sure that you were staying hydrated. So getting in all your water, as well as getting nutrients in and keeping your body, your sugar levels up. The other symptom that I had never experienced before pregnancy was heartburn and acid reflux. Thankfully, Tums are they're catered for pregnant women, because there were a lot of days that I woke up, and especially this is during the COVID era, there were a lot of days I woke up and I had a sore throat and I was like, oh my gosh, is it COVID? But no, it was just acid reflux that was burning my throat. So don't be afraid to take Tums. The next topic I want to touch on briefly is to tell or not to tell. This, I guess, is a bit of a controversial topic. During the first trimester, at least, there's a lot of people that are that decide not to announce their pregnancy until they've passed that first trimester. There's people that announce it right away. And ultimately, that decision's up to you. That being said, I want to go over kind of the two most common scenarios. Scenario number one, waiting until 12 weeks. This is what we had done. I wish I had the faith in the world to be able to just shout my joy from the rooftops when we found out we were pregnant. I was incredibly happy and excited, and yet I was terrified. This video is not meant to terrify you, but I just want you to be informed, and again, do your research. If there's anything I can say is do your research. But essentially 80% of miscarriages happen within the first trimester. Once you hit 6 weeks and have a confirmed heartbeat, that risk drops significantly to 10%. And by 12 weeks, it drops to about 5%, where it'll hover for the rest of the pregnancy. With this knowledge in mind, a lot of people choose to wait until that risk has dropped to 5% before telling others, so that if, God forbid, something were to happen, they wouldn't have to backtrack and tell all those people. Alternatively to what we did, there are people who will tell everyone right away and love having the support and the excitement from the get-go. It can also make things easier if, again, God forbid, something were to happen, you have that support team to kind of help you through it. Products I love for the first trimester are leggings. This somewhat touches into when you'll pop, which a good starting point is that everyone is different, every pregnancy is different, but kind of so you have an idea, is when I looked online, most first pregnancies will pop somewhere around the 20-week mark. So kind of around your halfway point, you'll start getting that, baby bump. And then every pregnancy after that, it kind of starts a little sooner. Things like that, your body just kicks into gear faster. Let me reiterate, everyone is different. Some people don't show until their 3rd trimester. Some people are like me and look like they ate a watermelon at 12 weeks. Like, bang on, overnight, bop. But my point is just, it's different for everyone. Leggings accommodate all of that. The second product would be lemon ginger drops. We talked about the nausea. We talked about the acid reflux, which leaves an awful taste. These were just super helpful to like preoccupy my mind, get rid of that taste. So the next thing is we have a huge water bottle. This ensured that I was getting in my water. Not something I'm very good at. So having a big water bottle really made sure that I was like conscious, like, oh my gosh, I haven't drank like anything. Yeah. And that water, especially for me, like my first and biggest symptom was swelling, and the water, like if I kept my water intake up, that helped relieve that. Number 5 is research and decisions. There are quite a few things that you're going to want to start looking into, doing a little research and making a decision on during your first trimester. First one is a baby registry. Separate videos coming out in a couple weeks about this. The second thing is the sex of your baby. If you want to find out or not, you're going to want to let your doctor know anytime you go for an ultrasound. The next thing is a support team. If you're looking into hiring a doula or a midwife, they're hot on the market these days. So you're going to want to know that as soon as possible so that you can go ahead and schedule them, book them in, and just feel comfortable about them, as well as who will be your care provider. So if you're being followed by a family doctor, do they have privileges to deliver at the hospital? Do you have to go to an OBGYN that has privileges to deliver at the hospital? What hospital is like your preference for delivering at? Who do you want to attend the birth of your child? Next topic is budget. There's an entire video coming out next week about this, and finances and just kind of things we did that helped us. And last thing, but surely not least, because this is where the journey ends/begins, labor and delivery. There's like so many things. What would be your ideal labor? Do you want unmedicated water birth? Are those options at your hospital? Hypnobirthing? Do you want to take classes? It can be a little overwhelming, but like, again, you have 9 months to make your final decision, but don't wait till the last minute to start looking into things. The final topic that I'm just going to touch on briefly is complications. And I'm not going to deep dive into this because for most people, like, why worry until there's something to worry about? But if you're like me, then like, I like to have as much knowledge as possible before going into a situation. So there can be complications this early on in pregnancy. Miscarriage rates are the highest at this point, and they slowly plateau, as we mentioned, around 12 weeks. That being said, a large portion of those miscarriages actually fall under the chemical pregnancy category. So what is a chemical pregnancy? So chemical pregnancy is when the egg is fertilized, but it never actually implants. So this is also another reason why it's a good idea to wait until your missed period before testing, because if you test before then, you could have a positive result even though your egg hasn't successfully implanted yet. And then a couple days later, end up getting your period, the egg gets flushed out. The second complication I want to touch on briefly is an ectopic pregnancy. So this is when the egg, instead of implanting in the uterus, implants in an inviable zone such as a fallopian tube. This can cause a lot of complications for mom if it's gone untreated, and it's worth knowing about and doing a little research on if you think you have some strange symptoms, or again, speak to your medical professional if you have any concerns. When it comes to first trimester complications for myself, we did have one little hiccup. At about 7 weeks pregnant, I tripped on the curb outside of my apartment building, and it was like a really bad sprain. But like when I tried to get back up, I couldn't get back up. I couldn't wait there. I had to call Dally to come and help me get back inside. We ended up going to Emerge, which peak COVID moment was terrifying in itself. But then I had to get x-rays, which I was terrified about because I knew that radiation wasn't good for the baby. But things I learned from that incident is that Advil is safe to take for most pregnancies. Again, check with your medical practitioner. I also learned that The radiation from x-rays that is harmful would be like in large doses. So like if I was working in x-rays or things like that, like one-off x-ray, wasn't going to be too bad, especially when the alternative was getting a cast without knowing whether it was broken, which would increase my chances of blood clots. And that risk was actually more than getting one x-ray. Oh yeah, and also about radiation, like it's not nearly, like x-ray machines aren't nearly as strong as they used to be, and they have the big leaded, the big lead jackets. On top of that, like the radiation isn't on my stomach. Like I wasn't getting an abdominal x-ray, I was getting an ankle x-ray. But that whole situation was hilarious because, as I said, we didn't tell people we were pregnant. So I left the hospital and I had all these friends and families telling me like, oh, you're on bed rest for like 2 weeks. That must be so fun. Just like drink up on wine. Make sure you're taking your anti-inflammatories. And like, these are things that you cannot take when pregnant. That pretty much covers the first trimester. I hope you're enjoying the series. We do have more videos coming out as we finish up the year. And thank you guys so much. We're really grateful for your support. Yeah, and remember, life is what happens between the plans that you make. Bye, guys.